Hey, it's Roger, creator of the Azure Sandbox, and in this video series, we're going to explore the new extra configuration that was just published called VNet On-Prem. And so let's go up to our Azure Sandbox URL, aka.ms Azure Sandbox, and we'll navigate over to our GitHub repository from this deployment section here. And the new configuration is in this extras section. And it's under here, VNet On-Prem. So let's just explore the architecture of this new configuration and why I created it. A sandbox is great for experimenting with new features and capabilities for building new solutions. But one of the things that it doesn't always help with is testing out or understanding how hybrid features work for connecting Azure to your on-premises network. So one of the cool things that you can do sometimes with Azure is you can simulate an on-premises environment. So that's what we've done here with this on-prem configuration. So let's walk through kind of what all is included. So first of all, this is going to be in the same Azure subscription as your Sandbox environment, and we're going to use the same resource group as well, just to keep things contained and so that you won't require any additional RBAC privileges to provision this configuration. And what we're going to add is a new virtual network, which we're going to call VNet On-Prem, which has a 192.168.0.0/16 address space, which is different from what we use from the Azure Sandbox, which is 10.x type private address range. And that's intentional because we want this to look like a different network, okay? And inside that network, we're going to have a VPN gateway set up. And we're going to use that VPN gateway to set up a site-to-site VPN connection with our Sandbox environment using the vWAN hub that was previously provisioned, right? So we drop a site-to-site VPN gateway in there. We provision a VPN gateway in our on-prem network, and then we fire up a site-to-site VPN connection. We use BGP to kind of share the routes on both sides. And then we have these two networks that can talk to each other, right? So then also within this on-prem network, we're going to have a new domain controller. We're going to call that ADDS2, and that'll be configured with a new domain called myonprem.local. Okay, and so we'll have a separate domain from our Sandbox domain, which is mysandbox.local. So those two domains are running in independent networks, and they function both as domain controllers and as DNS servers, because we're using AD integrated DNS in both cases. And we're also going to drop a jump box into this simulated on-premises network so we can do things. We can navigate around, we can test network connectivity, we can test DNS name resolution. An important reason why we want to set this up is so that resources in Azure can connect to and use resources on-prem and vice versa. In order to get that flowing, we have to get DNS configured properly. So we're going to use a DNS private resolver to accomplish that. So the DNS private resolver has an inbound endpoint of 10.1.2.4, okay? That's running up in our Sandbox environment. And whenever I do queries against these domains, mysandbox.local or any of these three Azure domains that are used for our PaaS services, so this file.core.windows.net is Azure Files, database.windows.net is Azure SQL Database, and mysql.database.azure.com is Azure MySQL Flexible Server. So whenever in my on-premises network I do a query against any of those 4 private domains, right? My conditional forwarders here in my on-prem domain controller will send those queries up to this inbound endpoint into the private DNS resolver, and I'll be able to get back the private IP address associated with that private DNS zone that's hosted up in Azure, including the private endpoints that we've already established for things like Azure Files, Azure SQL Database, and Azure MySQL Flexible Server. And then the other cool thing about this is that same private DNS resolver we can use from the Azure side to get to these on-premises domains, this myonprem.local domain that we've provisioned here, as well as this jump box here if we want to connect to that. We can do DNS queries to it, and we can actually connect to it using this site-to-site VPN connection. So this basically gives you the opportunity to test out some of these key capabilities like site-to-site VPN for connecting up a couple of networks, as well as the Azure DNS private resolver. So that's a high-level understanding of the architecture for this new configuration. And what I'll jump into next is kind of an overview, and we'll actually provision this configuration in the next video. Thanks, everybody.